So speaking of Senator Sanders, as you know, I sat down with him recently, and I asked him specifically about the idea of universal basic income, the freedom dividend in particular, and why he views a federal jobs guarantee as a superior way to deal with the threat of automation. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
I think most people want to work. They want to be a productive member of society. I think it's a very deeply ingrained feeling that people have. They don't want to sit on the side. Yes, of course, getting a guaranteed income is better than having nothing and sleeping out on the street, that's for sure. But I think people want to be part of our humanity, to be truthful, and how we feel good about ourselves is when we are productive members of our society. We're contributing something. And I think people feel that very strongly. And I think there is more than enough work to be done in so many areas. And our job is to say, if you are able to work, we have a job for you. Because the truth is, we have so much work to do to rebuild this country in so many ways.
What's your response to that?
Oh my gosh. Where do I start? So there are a few issues. The big one is that Bernie's presenting it as if the American people all aspire to work for the federal government, and many of us do not. That's not the vision we have for ourselves in our careers and our lives. The second thing that he misses is that if you put this money into our hands, it creates hundreds of thousands of jobs right in our communities where we live and work, work that we'd be excited about doing. The third thing is that there are all these implementation problems in real life if you were to have a federal jobs guarantee. What are the jobs? Who manages the people? What if you don't like your job? What if you're not good at your job? The spirit of it is fantastic, but the implementation would have a whole set of problems. But the biggest issue I have with this idea of a federal jobs guarantee is it ignores the sort of work that my wife does every day, who's at home with our two boys, one of whom is autistic. It ignores the kind of work that caregivers do every day, someone like Kyle Christensen, who's at home with his ailing mom in Iowa. A federal jobs guarantee does nothing for parents, nurturers, and caregivers. And to me, that's some of the most important work that any of us are doing.
We have had this obsession with work as life, right? Whether it should be this way or not, people really base their self-worth on the work that they do. They center their lives around it. Men in particular, when they lose their job, it's sort of this existential crisis.
Totally.
So how do you transition from that way of thinking where we have sort of a religion of work in this country right now that's been in existence for, quite a while at this point?
No, so what we have to do is we have to broaden our definition of what work is. I couldn't agree more with you that work is central to human existence. Now, it's also clearly the case that we've gone a bit overboard here in the U.S., where Keynes decades ago projected that we'd be down to a 15-hour work week now because we'd be so productive.
How's that working out?
Instead, he was actually right about our GDP and revenue growth, but he was wrong that unfortunately we're working harder than ever. So we have to start thinking a little bit or a lot bigger about what work actually is and what's important to us. That's a big challenge, but the biggest concrete way to move us in that direction is to put down a foundation in the form of a dividend of $1,000 a month, because that would supercharge arts, creativity, culture, volunteerism, entrepreneurship. It would also help balance the scales for women and underrepresented minorities who right now the market tends to shut out. So this is a concrete step we can take to actually broaden what we think of as work.
One thing that I hear from you in your answer about the federal government, and not everybody wants to work for the federal government, do you have a skepticism around the federal government's ability to sort of implement a federal jobs guarantee in an efficient way?
I do, in large part because I saw what happened when the government put billions to work in retraining the displaced manufacturing workers in the Midwest, which again, everyone knows is excellent in theory. But when you dig into the reality on the ground, these programs were an abysmal failure for most of those workers. Almost half of the manufacturing workers that lost their jobs never worked again. And of that group, about half filed for disability. And then you saw surges in suicides and drug overdoses in those communities. So we have to be realistic about what our government is able to do and what it's going to promise to do, but then will fail to deliver on.